Can you hear me? Are you still awake? Fantastic. So thank you, Jag and Eli, to this fantastic introduction and overview of the issues that come up in use of AI in different cases and how to develop, use, and evaluate AI to ensure that it is ethical, responsible, transparent, and can indeed be a good partner in solving societal problems, and addressing societal challenges. So with that, I will give you an example of one of such societal challenges that I think that we are at least addressing in AI and bringing AI as a partner in the solution. So I'm sure many of you have seen these doomsday kind of, well, very, very sobering reports that they used to be put out by UN every 2 years, now they're every year, that say that we're losing biodiversity at an unprecedented rate. We're in the middle of what's known as the sixth extinction. So a headline that like this that shows that 1 million species face extinction. Let's do a quick quiz. You didn't know you were going to do a quiz when you came to this room. How many species of organisms, animals and plants, are out there altogether? What do you think? Just yell out numbers. 10 million, what else? 1 million? 1 million is facing extinction. That's a little too depressing. Other numbers, what do you think? 1 billion. 20 billion. Like, think of all the plants and animals. What's your sense?
Do we count bacteria?
Huh?
Do we count bacteria?
No, not bacteria. Yes. So only the eukaryotes, for those of you biologists. All right, estimated 9 million. We're talking about all the animals, including all the insects and plants. That is a ridiculously low number. Not only that, but that means that 1 million facing extinction is more than 10% of the estimated total number of species out there. That is a shockingly high number. And the problem is that we don't really quite know what we're losing and how fast. That's just a very broad estimate. The International Unit for Conservation of Nature, Red List, which is the official organization charged with tracking the biodiversity of the world, and so when we say that the species are endangered, it's because the Species Commission of IUCN Red List for that species determined, according to some metrics, that the conservation status of that species is endangered among the several options. So of about 160,000 species that they're tracking out of the 9 million, about 20,000 plus, their official conservation status is data deficient. Meaning we can't even tell whether they're reasonably okay or anything. Nothing, nada. We don't know how many, where they are, what's their range, what's the population trend, nothing. And about 66,000 more, their population trend is unknown. So this is more than half already of all the species that they're supposedly tracking. And these are not obscure species. Killer whales are data deficient. The iconic conservation species, polar bears, their population trend is unknown. Right? So what do we do? How do we get a clue? So today, technology really, provides an opportunity to get a clue about a lot more things out there than we never were able to observe or get any kind of data before. Right? And we have, satellites, remote sensing of various resolutions today, increasingly higher and higher resolution, autonomous vehicles underwater, on the ground, and in the air, on-body sensors for animals, in situ sensors such as camera traps, motion-activated cameras, and acoustic sensors, and many, many, many of these kinds of sensors, right? People taking pictures intentionally or unintentionally and putting them online and or submitting them to various platforms. And In fact, images today are by far the largest, most available corpus of data about pretty much anything that you want to know, from what you had for lunch to what you see in your backyard or in the fancy safari tour. So, quick quiz. How many of you have taken a picture of a living organism in the last week? That
Including humans?
Including humans, right? How about today? A living organism today, right? So we see that this is a pretty high fraction. So there are tons of pictures of living organisms out there, coming from a variety of sources. All of the ones that I mentioned, essentially all of them are also image sources. Just to give you a sense of how many images are out there, this is just one platform for iNaturalists, for people intentionally submitting observations of nature, right, in the form of images. So this is what used to be known as citizen scientists, but now it's the broad sort of participatory science. So anybody can download the app, submit a picture of a plant or an animal or a fungus that they see. So how many of you have heard of iNaturalist? Submitted an observation? Helped science? Okay, great. So this one platform, these are last week's numbers, more than 130 million images. 130 million images of more than 400,000 species. That's already more than IUCN Red List. But they're of varying quality and variety. Also, what do you notice? So mostly on land, right? We have very little in the deep sea. So even though majority of life is out there in the sea, what else?
There's data deficiency.
Right, there's data deficiency, man. There are white spaces. And the problem is, here's the map of biodiversity, the rather the higher concentration of biodiversity. This is the map of biodiversity of the world, just a number of different species. Right, compared to this.
Is there a correlation between human population and
And biodiversity? No, there isn't. So, some of the highest concentration biodiversity places also have high human concentration, but they're not necessarily high number of observations on iNaturalist. The situation is even worse if we're looking at where AI is developed in the world. So this is the overlay of the number of AI-related publications and patents, right, by country. There's almost a disjoint set with complementary where, anti-correlation, the number of AI, the production of AI, and the concentration of biodiversity. So if we do want to use data, images as the source of information, as the source of usable data for assessing biodiversity of the world, for monitoring biodiversity of the world, we will need to use AI. But AI is not produced with the mind even of the places that need to be monitored, right? Where biodiversity needs to be monitored. Worse, though, been mentioned today twice already, the high environmental cost of AI production. Right? This is from the recent Stanford's AI index. This is a little bit of a kind of maybe red herring, but still, it's an important aspect that modern AI models are huge hogs of energy, water, and rare metals. Right? They're also expensive, meaning that the gap between where they can be in the first place produced and what they take into consideration when they produce and resources that are needed to produce them is widening with every iteration to where, in the context of biodiversity and conservation, these models are needed. This technology is needed. And technology is needed. And we have a lot of the things already off the shelf. If we want to extract information about animals, let's say animals from images. So we have today already detection and localization, so we can take a picture, we can figure out where objects of interest, such as animals in this case, are. We can put a bounding box around them automatically. We can classify them into species, gray zebra, or zebra, the African buffalo. We can even do posture estimation, environmental reconstruction, and individual ID. We can take all these millions of images and find the ones that contain animals. We built a platform called Wildbook and started a whole nonprofit based on that algorithmic stack called WildMe, which is a nonprofit developing AI methods for wildlife conservation. And Wildbook is its leading project that was also part of the Microsoft AI for Earth initial round of technology development, a partner for that. So we can take all these images, find all the ones that contain animals, find where the animals are, so that's the detection localization, put a bounding box around each one, and it's a non-trivial task, especially when you consider that you need to have this little baby calf, elephant calf hiding behind its mom, or these overlapping zebras in the bush, or a tortoise underwater, tortoises are on the ground, turtle underwater. And then not only classify their species, but identify down to individual animal, as in Zippy the zebra, and Joe the giraffe, and Terry the turtle, and Willie the whale. So using...
That's an amazing amount of photos. I wonder, how do they sort through them all, and then identify individual animals? Each image is processed through a series of convolutional neural networks and matching algorithms. The first network determines whether there are any animals of interest, in this case, zebras. The next set of networks localize each animal in its own subregion and classify the species. At this point, background segmentation is performed on the subregion to generate a rough mask of the zebra. Once this is done, key points are extracted from the zebra, and feature descriptors are built. These descriptors serve as a sort of fingerprint that can be compared for similarity against previously identified individual animals in a large database. The scores from this comparison allow the system to decide which animals are the most likely matches. When the match has high enough confidence, it's accepted immediately. Matches that have lower confidence are shown to a human expert, who then makes the final decision.
This is one of the many algorithms we started. That was the first one we started about 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. We have today more than 11 different algorithms for biometric identification of individual animals of different species, from marine to terrestrial, anything striped, spotted, wrinkled, notched, including the shape of a whale's fluke or the dorsal fin of a dolphin. And together with the information on when and where the image was taken, this now becomes an individual. We can use images to track animals without putting GPS collars on them and tranquilize or count them, even identify their social network. So this is an example of a page from Wildbook for cetaceans, whales, and dolphins called Flukebook. And this is a page of an individual, the most cited individual on that Wildbook. Penchi, she is a sperm whale, was seen more than 600 times. She really loves hanging out around Dominica and is a social one. Sperm whales are social, not all whales are. And so we use the shape of that tail, just the edge of the shape of the edge of the tail, to identify the individuals. Increasingly, we are using deep learning approaches for identification, although they don't always work, and I can take that discussion off. Why not? Why machine learning is not the answer to everything. And in general, this Wildbook for whales and dolphins, Flukebook, has more than 2 million photographs of almost 350,000 sightings of almost 70,000 uniquely identified individual whales and dolphins. And do you know what's the latest addition of which species have been added to Wildbook almost a year ago, to this Wildbook? killer whales. So remember that data-deficient killer whales from IUCN Red List? So when we added the killer whales to the platform, within 2 months we had thousands of observations, and by the end of this year we're hoping that the IUCN Species Commission for killer whales will review the status of the species, and they will be data deficient no more. Because there are tons of observations out there that people already have historically. When we put the new species, when people start new species on Wildbook, observations occasionally start going back to 1990s, especially for long-lived animals, right? So species. Oops. So that's the killer whale, the orca's addition to Wildbook, and we're already seeing sort of, and you can see this is going to 2018, even though we just started the Wildbook, and in some cases to 1990s. So we're using that. Believe it or not, that plus some spots occasionally when we can see it from above, that's sufficient to identify, reliably identify individuals. It's fantastic, right? So right away we can increase the total. We also built a bot, and who is, as of a year ago about, can now be really, really chatty bot. But it's an intelligent agent that scrapes posts on social media, finding the ones for relevant species. In this case, a particular website that has publicly posted videos of whale sharks, and also a species in our Wildbooks, and finds the frames, sends them to the image analysis, identifies individuals, adds to the appropriate page of Wildbook, and then generates text. Now it's not as shocking as it used to be, 7 years ago when we started this. Hey, 2 minutes 46 seconds. We found this picture of a whale shark in your video, in your vacation video. Here's everything we know about it. People go and people respond. People reply like, "Wow, and you're an AI. This is amazing. How can I help?" That thing of how can I help, right? That's the point. That's the important point. So up until this point, I just described to you a pretty technical aspect of building an AI system that extracts information, necessary information out of images. Fantastic. Computer vision, here's a publication in top conferences, we're done, right? No. Here's where the real work starts, where the real work for conservation starts. Connecting to people where they are, right there, because they went on a vacation in Cancun and they swam with a whale shark. We know already, and they posted that video, there's already a connection of that individual to a whale shark. And now we're connecting them to conservation and science, and they can contribute just by taking a video. They didn't even know that. In every page, and so that's their contribution, right there. At the bottom of every page, we also list all the individuals that contributed to that data to that specific, organizations and people that contributed data to that specific individual, in this case, whale shark, because these are global species, so there's not one individual project, not one research conservation organization that has the information even about one individual in its entirety. It is only by connecting all the data together, all the people together, that we can really, truly put the global picture of a global species, right? And that's the second aspect of the technology that we build. So we need to build a technology that connects among people, among data pieces, among geographic areas, among different animals, right? And so the Sharkbook AI, Sharkbook, which is the Wildbook for sharks, which includes whale sharks, the largest fish on Earth, now has more than 17,000 uniquely identified individuals. Data coming from directly reported from almost 100,000 sightings, reported by more than 9,000 volunteers who directly upload data to the Wildbook. About 321 to be precise, conservation and research projects, and one very intelligent bot that brings in fact, more than half of the more information, more sightings than all the human contributors combined from various social media sources. And the thing is, that data really made a difference, that addition, that combination. So IUCN entry for whale sharks, pre-wild book, global population size was estimated to be, global population size was estimated to be 103,000 with a standard error between 27,000 and 180,000. Data scientists in the room, right? This is a very scientific way of saying we have no clue. So with the data from what used to be called then whale shark, and now it's Shark Book AI, in 2016 already, the Species Commission reassessed the conservation status, and the conservation status of the species was changed from vulnerable to endangered, and the population trend updated from stable to decreasing, not because the species are doing worse, but because we have better data, right, and more data. And that matters because that instantly triggers a whole host of different policies. Lots of protection laws, lots of resources that are now allocated to endangered species that are not available to vulnerable species, right? The most comprehensive study on the biology of whale sharks was published using data from Wild Book and co-authored by 37 authors who met through the pages of Wild Book. That at the bottom thing, here's everybody who contributed data, that's how they met. Right? And this is one of the papers that I'm probably most proud of in my entire career, even though I'm not a co-author on it. It's because the technology that we built, the algorithms that we developed, the system that we thought through, going beyond the algorithms, of delivering the algorithms and the technology to the people who need to use it, enabled that. Right? There is a more recent paper that, again, many co-authors through the pages of Wild Book updated are updating the status and also advocating that this is the way to truly monitor populations at scale. We have platforms for more than 60 species and growing daily. There are a couple of additions that are coming online this month. Among my favorite are weedy and leafy sea dragons. These are seahorses, and yes, they're mostly in Australia. Actually, all of these are in Australia. And yes, they are individually identifiable. How cool is that? They're also endangered and are indicated species for coral reefs. The same technology that was used to stand up these platforms and do biodiversity monitoring at a global scale also enabled the first ever full census of an entire species, the endangered Grevy's zebra. That's not the zebra you're thinking about. The zebras you're thinking about, the thousands, Serengeti, running with wildebeest, these are common zebras, also known as plain zebras, also known as just zebras. They have whiter stripes and they're not endangered. Each population is several thousands. These guys, the Grevy zebras, have thin stripes and mostly seen at zoos. And there is about 3,000 of them total in the world. 95% of them are in Kenya with a couple of hundred in Ethiopia. And so for the first time in 2016, hundreds of people were driving around the country for 2 days taking pictures of every Grevy zebra they saw. This is everybody from school kids and park rangers to tourists with telephoto cameras, and the US ambassador to Kenya at the time, Bob Godek, took more than 40,000 images of zebras. I was seeing stripes for a long time after looking at them. And so we identified all the zebras that we could in all of this and provided the most accurate population census, not estimate, count, population census to date at the time, so much so that, and it was 2352 plus minus 72 with super tight confidence bounds. So much so that Kenya Wildlife Service went complete 180 from saying this is not how we count our zebras to, oh, this is exactly how we're going to count our zebras from now on, and you're on the hook every 2 years to do this. And so we supported the repeating of that event in 2018, more people, more locations, more pictures, and actually more animals. So it went from 2352 to 2800 plus minus 150. And again, technology is not the end. It's the delivering of the technology to the right hands and enabling people to use it. So they're the ones powering conservation. This event, the tagline was Kenyans powering conservation. To make that happen, we need to create technology and deliver it to the hands of those who can use it. We got donations of GPS-enabled cameras. We developed a whole protocol of how to synchronize cameras that do not have GPS to the GPS-enabled ones so we can have everybody participate. Because that really, truly democratizes, right, everybody's participation. All you have to do is take a picture, press that button. The nonprofits, local Kenyan nonprofits, produced a booklet that explained the entire process, why we're doing, what they're doing, what's going to happen with the pictures, and how are they going to be used in the conservation, the entire story of the conservation of this beautiful animal. We did a lot of training to many different organizations, groups, park rangers, Kenya Wildlife Service rangers who walk with AR-15s to protect rhinos and everybody else. And did it in English, translated to Swahili, translated to Maasai and Northern Maasai Samburu, over and over again, so everybody could participate, everybody could use GPS cameras where needed, or just regular cameras and synchronize them. We also did training to different conservation organizations, and particularly their technology and data managers, so that they could use this system and process the data on their own. We need to redo the training, and I want that T-shirt. Right. And it takes a lot to not only, beyond designing an algorithm, to develop responsible technology that is indeed solving the problem it's intended to solve. And so, does it actually solve the problem? What kind of insights so we did a lot of analysis on bias, of data collection, because it's only where people drive around and can take a picture, right? So I'll skip a lot of it. There's a lot of statistical analysis on bias of data collection, on bias of from every different perspective, and sort of the answer is we could correct for that bias, and some of it was the process itself already was correcting for some of the aspects of the bias, but we also knew what questions we could and could not answer from those data. The things that we could answer is comparing year to year, and indeed say, yes, the population is growing, because the confidence bounds were so tight for the first time ever that that they disjoined, right, from 2016 to 2018. And we could do it county by county, where for every county where gravy zebras are. We could also ask what the percent of non-adults. You need about 30% of non-adults in a population to sustain it. And every county but one, we're just looking at 2016 data, because you also need to see how many survive. So this is how many non-adults survive in the population. So all counties but one had 30% of non-adults surviving. Now, any idea why one county would not have enough baby zebras surviving to adulthood? Come on. Just predation. Oh my God, he went straight for the right answer. Even when I ask in a I've given this talk in a conservation audience, they still go to poaching and other human factors. Yes, predation. Meru County was doing such a great job with lion conservation that they were having too many predators per prey, for ungulates, and so, lion sitting there, a baby zebra passing by, it's like, oh, look, bar-coded snack, I'll take that one. So the numbers, again, were so good, so tight. We could stand under the bridge that we built from the point of technology to reliably say, yes, you can trust this fact, that there are too many lions per zebra in that county. And it allowed the conservation managers to put what otherwise would have been a very controversial policy of lion contraception. to put the predator and prey in balance. Not only that, it also the availability of technology told them that they could monitor the success of that policy, right, and stop or taper off or sort of calibrate it as needed. It also provided the basis for the Kenya Wildlife Service and all 6 governors that have the gravy zebras in their counties to sign on onto the Species Management Act, putting resources, land, money, people, allocating to protect these and actually other species. One of my favorite sentences that was kind of in the opening of the 2018 event by Kenya Wildlife Service Assistant Director Simon Gitau said, "This shows the power of citizen science and machine learning for conservation." There are 3 firsts in that sentence. I was tearful. This was the first time that Kenya Wildlife Service endorsed the protocol of counting, of doing population census that was different from what they've done for decades, right? Which is everybody's going to participate and count and take pictures, not the drive-by sampling or fly-by sampling that they were using until that point. This was the first time that they engaged, in general, not only different protocol, engaged everybody in the process. Truly everybody participated. Our youngest photographer was 3 years old. And this was the first time they used the words machine learning in a sentence. And so the outcome is also change in the gravy zebra IUCN red list entry that updated the population and the status of the species. Actually, in this case, trending in the good direction, right? In the opposite direction. It seems like the population is actually growing. So we're waiting. There was a 2020 event. We need to retrain Kenyan data managers to actually do the analysis. There was a lot of disruption in the last 3 years. I can't remember what, but they were busy with many other things. Not the least of it is that there was one of the worst droughts this past year. Thankfully ended with a lot of rain, but most of the volunteers, most of the conservation organizations were busy delivering water directly by trucks to conservation areas in Kenya. So, on the subject of responsible AI, so I've just told you a great story of how AI can indeed be used to address a societal challenge, which really we think AI is the right solution here. Right? But what's gold for science and conservation managers, unfortunately, also is very useful for wildlife criminals. So this is the unintended use part. Geotagged images of endangered species are beacons, right, for poachers. Come here right now. A selfie with an elephant posted on social media attracted poachers within hours to the location. It's not a problem. It's a problem that's accelerated. And a platform like Wildbook that has millions of images of endangered species, geotagged, collocated, where not only you can have an image, oh, there was an elephant there right now, but also you can start seeing patterns if you have enough of these data. Needs to be protected. So we protect our data to the highest cybersecurity standards. We also use identity management. It's very sophisticated identity management system. But there's more than just that. There's actually a data leakage problem, and there are no policies in place. There's no policy. There are no kind of guidelines on protecting this kind of data at all, and understanding what data leakage means. This is not differential privacy. This is a very different problem. And so we published a white paper called Privacy for Tigers that outlines some of it, but there's a lot more work to do here. The other aspect is bias, talking about responsible data science and AI. And there are many, many, many sources of bias in this process. You have even just estimated the population size, right? There is the true population. The first source of bias has nothing to do with AI. It's being at the right place at the right time to even be able to take a picture, to see the animal. Forget about taking pictures, to see the animals, right? That's the spatial-temporal bias. People have talked about it, no matter what source of observation you're using. Then if you're taking a photograph, whether it's a UAV or a camera trap or a person with a camera, there's the bias of who deciding or able to take a picture of an animal, a good picture at that point. And then if we're talking about collecting from social media, then there is the social media bias. Which are you going to post? What are you going to post? Which social media? With what accessibility? So is it going to be public? Is it going to be private? Then how social media platform allows you to collect data, how often, how much, what are the APIs, what models you're using to do, and finally, you produce a population size estimate, but all you care about after all of that is not figuring out exactly what each bias does, but overall, can you produce an accurate estimate from all of this? And so we've done some work on that, and the answer is maybe. Depends. It depends. Or as they used to say on some social media platform, it's complicated. But hopefully, I've given you a little bit of a taste of how AI and humans together in partnership, right, can enable science conservation and public engagement by intentionally not only designing good algorithms, but by bringing communities together and working in partnership that provides solutions that people trust. And there is a lot that goes into building that trust. I have another 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes and 2 seconds. Okay, so I want to show, this is not recorded, correct? Oh, it is. Then I cannot show a video. Anyway, so with that, I will just thank a large number of people that make something like this happen continuously. The co-founders of, and inspiration, co-founders of Wild Book and Wild Me, so my partners, Chuck Stewart, who is a computer vision researcher and faculty at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, Dan Rubenstein, who is an ecologist, and the zebra guy in the world, the zebra researcher in the world, just about to retire from Princeton, ecology and evolutionary biology, Jason Holmberg, who is now the executive director of Wild Me, the nonprofit, the board and the team of Wild Me. I'm also on the board, so full disclosure, and many, many organizations that supported us, including there is Microsoft and Microsoft Research, both supported us over the years in different ways. And more importantly, thousands and thousands, really thousands of volunteers who've done everything from collecting data, testing it, labeling it, being early adopters of the technology, providing feedback, being part of the, so Wild Me and Wild Book in general as an open source community. It's not only just, oh, here's the source code, have fun. We actually build a forum, an open source community with version control, testing, and validation, and now just got the NSF grant to build, to expand this. And the most importantly, all the conservation organizations and researchers who are actually doing the work in the field to protect the biodiversity of the world and mitigate the impact that we humans in many different ways have on it, because computers ultimately, no algorithm is going to do the work in the field of protecting. It is the humans that are going to do that. With that, thank you. Oh, sorry.
you showed the carbon footprint for the large language models. How does that relate to the data centers, that the rest of the computational work that's being done in the cloud and other data centers?
So we're actually past the bot for a little while. We're considering the trade-offs of restarting it versus the impact on data collection. We need a bit of time to figure out. Yeah, so I'm also not entirely, so back to when do we really need an algorithmic solution? So in this case, a much simpler bot is going to do a good enough job. And we're about to restart a much simpler bot than ChatGPT, because this is the kind of do no harm approach. Right? We don't need the full-blown model. We can pre-program essentially the 10 sentences it needs to produce, right? The 10 responses it needs to know. So no.
But are the models, I mean, how do they compare to the rest of the AWS or Azure or Google Cloud? I mean, it must be a tiny contribution. Yeah. So I wonder whether if you had the concept of open large language or foundation models, that you trained those that could be through transfer learning adapted to other models. Is that a more kind of environmentally effective way? I recognize you can't do that when everything is closed.
Right. So there are a couple of aspects to it. One is the environmental impact. Yeah, so if they're already trained, the fine-tuning, transfer learning, all of this, is a tiny, tiny addition and maybe worthwhile. I have a fundamental, we're still evaluating, right? And everybody's evaluating the ethics of those models, the LLMs and foundation models in the first place, because on what they're trained also. It's not only the environmental aspect, there are the ethical issues there, because they're trained on in DALL-E's and Midjourney's pieces of art that are copyrighted, right? In case of ChatGPT and Bard on text that not necessarily was given the permission for these models to be trained on. So not sure yet where we are on that issue. Yeah.
Maybe just a follow-up on that. You
had this slide that showed a YouTube video and then went to the bot and basically extracting that information from that YouTube video and finding where the whale is or wildlife. So the question or maybe suggestion that I'm going to ask, and then you raise this point about like what these models are trained on, and this is inference, not training, but I'm wondering if it's possible, especially because you mentioned 300 of 329, so it's not as at scale. So is it possible to just reach out to these people who post these public videos and basically, this one, and reach out to them and like get the consent? Could it be doable?
We do. This is what we explicitly do. So we don't grab the data until we get the response from them. So we're not using that data for training in any way. So you can then get one of the ways when they respond, yes, wow, how can I help? The response to how can I help can be, for example, can we use your data for training?
Yes, so for the inference piece, you also ask them, so are you okay if we analyze your video? Is that something that we could do? So get the consent, because this is a secondary use of the data. So is that possible?
Right, so these are public. At the time of taking, we can, right? We can use it for training. But we're not going to retain it, and we're not going to incorporate, we're not using it for training, sorry. We're only using it for inference. Yeah. We're not using it for training. It's publicly posted. We're using it for, we're telling them, we're adding the information to them and saying, this is the individual in your video. Here's everything else we know about it.
So this is after analysis. So I'm wondering if we could do this before the analysis, so we have their consent, and then if they say yes, then we can do the analysis.
So for analysis itself of saying here's who it is, you don't actually need it because it is publicly at the time. So the question is, can you use it for training? Right? Can you use it for training and adding it? Here's the difference. For analysis itself, we can discard it if we don't hear from them, right? So it doesn't become part of any data set, ever. If you incorporate it in training, then you cannot remove it afterwards, right? Because you need to sort of roll back and retrain the model without that if they don't consent. So we don't use it for training. We figure out who that individual is, which doesn't require any training. We tell them, here's an individual, while the video is still public, right? And remember, they can also change their policy. So if they change their policy, remove the video, then we can remove the data. There is nothing that propagates from our use of data. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Just yell.
All right.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Thank you so much for this presentation, and kind of showed me how machine learning research has been used for like a variety of things, and especially for this conservation stuff. And you mentioned in your presentation about some things that machine learning can do and some things it cannot do and cannot promise. I was just wondering, as machine learning researchers, when we're talking with different folks in different domains, we want to interact, we want to convey what the limitations of machine learning are, what we can do and what we cannot do. So I was just wondering what sort of stuff you cannot do with machine learning in this space, and pretty much.
Right. So we're still, I mean, there's a variety of things on this as answers to this. So there's a class of things where right now we're very, we can tell you who it is if there's enough biometric data, but not for a lot of species. So we're not good actually at recognizing individuals of species where humans cannot well differentiate them, right? And there's, for example, and we have limitations in our visual apparatus. So there is a paper that came out that showed that humans could not differentiate between even phenotypes of a particular species of moth because we don't have enough red-orange acuity. Shocking. It did not evolve for us. It evolved for birds. So, there's a whole bunch of things we just plainly don't see. So we cannot differentiate. We can't even classify species, forget about doing individuals. So there's those limitations. There are limitations on you don't have data, right? We know very little about cryptic species that are hard to see, rare species at the margins of their habitats, species at where humans are not, species in the middle of the sea. So that's kind of still a data issue. But in terms of AI, I think the biggest opportunity right now of what AI can and cannot do is, so what is on my front page, but I didn't talk about it today, even though I offered, is the foundational research of using images as the source of information about, I should have prepared a slide, source of information about the nature, and this is imageomics. So imageomics is a year and a half ago funded institute, National Science Foundation funded institute, on studying a whole new field of science of extracting biologically meaningful semantic information, particularly traits and phenotypes, directly from images. So being able to say not only this is this species of bird, but this is this species of bird because it has a yellow belly, black behind the beak, and it wobbles when it walks, right? Or, and to get there, so it's not quite explainable AI, it's interpretable AI. There is a difference. So, and this is a bit of a digression, but because these terms are occasionally confused, or often confused rather, I had one of the best explanations of what's the difference between transparent, interpretable, and explainable is the microwave. Have you heard about that? No? All right. So you have a microwave. Everybody knows how to use one, right? I've seen one or occasionally used one. So transparency means that you have a manual that comes with that microwave, and it explains where it was manufactured, should you expect when you open the box, and where should you call if things break down, like, and what to watch for, and so on and so forth. Interpretable means that every time you put the same thing in the microwave, you press the button, it's the same button, you expect the same thing to happen, right? And if you double the amount, you need to double the time. Everybody knows that, right? So, and then explainable means it's like, well, the physics of microwave heating is the following. I'm sure some physicists can explain further what that means. So that's the difference. So I don't think, and I think fundamentally, explainable AI is a great aspiration. I don't know when and whether we're going to get there, and it's probably a strong statement for many people. Interpretable, absolutely. Interpretable is within grasp. And transparent is a must. It's part of being responsible and ethical. But interpretable, that's where I think is the next kind of, like, and so imageomics in that sense goes for interpretable AI within the context of using images for biological inference directly, right? So for example, when we tell people, particularly kids, that we can identify individual zebras from photographs, one of the first questions from kids we get is, oh, so are baby zebra stripes similar to its moms? Great question. As humans, we're not able to answer it. Why? Because we've evolved to be able to quantify similarity of faces. Oh, the baby looks like its dad, the baby looks like its mom. Or this person looks like that celebrity. But not if I ask you, is the first pair of zebras more similar than the second one? You're like, huh? Right? We have no way to do that. But the same algorithms, the computer vision algorithms, actually can quantify it. So, but that's just quantifying the similarity. But the so what of it, the transition from that to biological hypothesis, to biological discoveries, that's where I think we can just kind of, we're trying, this is the charge, the vision, the mission of imageomics, to get there, and then maybe connect phenotype back to genotype again, but now from images in the opposite direction. We've done it from genotype to phenotype quite a bit. So, but I think that is starting to bump up sort of against the limits of at least current AI. And certainly when biologists said, well, why can't it tell me, like, why it classified this butterfly as this subspecies? I'm like, not there yet.